The night was thick with rain and sirens when Daniel Hayes dragged the stranger out of the burning taxi. Her body was limp, her hair singed, and smoke poured from the wreckage like black ghosts. But as he tore open her coat to check her breathing, his eyes froze. Dangling against her soot-streaked skin was a small silver locket, the same locket he'd buried with his wife 3 years ago. For a moment, the world went silent. The roaring flames, the shouting paramedics, the crackling radio, everything disappeared beneath the weight of that impossible sight. How could this woman, a complete stranger, be wearing Emily's locket? And why did her face, though battered and unfamiliar, stir something deep inside him? Daniel Hayes wasn't supposed to be there that night. He'd promised himself he wouldn't drive through that part of town anymore, too many memories. That's where the accident had happened. That's where he'd lost her. Emily had been everything to him: laughter on slow mornings, courage in hard times, warmth when the world felt cold. And when that drunk driver slammed into her car 3 years ago, Daniel's world didn't just collapse, it went silent. So when the crash happened in front of him that rainy Thursday, his first instinct wasn't to act. He sat frozen in his car, watching the taxi spin out of control, collide with the guardrail, and erupt into flames. The heat hit his windshield, snapping him out of his paralysis. By the time he reached the taxi, flames were licking at the metal doors. A woman inside was pounding weakly on the glass, her cries muffled by smoke. Daniel didn't think, he just moved. He grabbed a metal rod from the ground, smashed the window, and pulled her out as the vehicle exploded behind them. She was unconscious. Her clothes were scorched. He laid her on the wet pavement, his hands trembling as he checked for a pulse. And that's when he saw it, that locket. The same oval silver locket with the tiny engraved E. He'd seen it every day for 10 years, on Emily's neck, glinting in sunlight or resting against her collarbone. He'd buried it with her. His breath caught. His mind told him it couldn't be real, but his heart didn't believe it. Paramedics arrived, pushing him back, but he couldn't look away. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, he noticed something else. Her wrist bore a faint scar, shaped like a crescent moon. Emily had one just like it, from the time they'd tried to open a bottle of wine with a screwdriver on their anniversary. Daniel followed the ambulance to the hospital. He told himself it was just shock, that grief was making him see ghosts. But deep down, something gnawed at him. What if there was more to this? Hours later, he sat outside her hospital room, soaked and shivering. When the doctor finally came out, Daniel stood, his voice cracking. "Will she be okay? She's stable," the doctor said. "No ID, though. We'll run fingerprints. She may have memory loss from the trauma." Memory loss. That hit Daniel like a whisper from the universe. When he finally stepped into her room, the sight stole his breath again. She looked peaceful now, bandaged and breathing softly. Her face was familiar, not identical to Emily's, but close enough to stir old pain. And then, as if destiny wasn't done with him yet, she opened her eyes. Her voice was hoarse when she whispered, "Daniel." He stumbled back. How do you know my name?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know. It just came to me." Daniel's world spun. The locket gleamed under the fluorescent light, his wife's locket, resting over a heart that shouldn't know his name. Over the next few days, Daniel visited her constantly. She said her name was Clara. At least, that's what the nurses called her, the name found on a burned handbag near the wreck. But every time she looked at him, Daniel felt Emily's ghost watching through her eyes. Clara had no memory of the crash, or her life before it. The doctors said it might come back slowly, or never. But she kept saying she felt pulled toward Daniel, like she'd known him forever. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe she'd seen his name on something, maybe the locket was coincidence, but the more time he spent with her, the harder it became to believe that. One afternoon, Clara asked, "Who did this belong to?" As she held up the locket, Daniel hesitated. "It belonged to my wife. She passed away 3 years ago." Her eyes softened. "I'm so sorry." She opened it, revealing the tiny photo inside, Daniel and Emily smiling on a beach. Tears filled her eyes. "That's you," she whispered. "And her. I remember this place. I remember you." Daniel froze. "Clara, what do you mean?" "I don't know," she said, clutching her head. "It's like flashes, water, laughter, a song you used to hum. I don't understand." The doctors said trauma could cause shared delusions, but Daniel couldn't ignore what he saw. She remembered things only Emily would know. The small scar behind his ear. The line he always said when he tucked her in, "I'll see you in my next heartbeat." And when Clara whispered that line back to him one night, Daniel broke. He held her hand, torn between logic and love, between grief and hope. Maybe this wasn't Emily reborn. Maybe this was life giving him a second chance, not to relive the past, but to heal from it. Weeks passed, and Clara began to recover. She never fully regained her memories, but she started a new life, one Daniel became part of. Their connection grew quietly, without the shadow of ghosts, built instead on the lessons of love and loss. One evening, they stood together at the beach, the same one from the photo. The wind carried the scent of salt and memory. Clara held the locket in her palm. "I think she'd want you to have this back," she said. Daniel smiled softly. "No," he said, "it found its way to you for a reason. Maybe it wasn't just about remembering her. Maybe it was about reminding me to live again." She looked at him, eyes full of something deep and calm. "Then let's live." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel finally felt peace, not because he'd found Emily again, but because he'd found a reason to keep moving forward. The fire that once burned his world to ashes had brought him back to life. Sometimes, the people we lose return to us, not in the same form, but in moments, in memories, in souls that help us heal. Love doesn't end in the flames of tragedy. It transforms, and leads us home again.